Okay, thank you for joining today's PowerTeacher Pro meeting. We're going to be recording this session so that it's available to everyone. The way we're going to structure this training is we're going to go ahead and go over the same exact principles that we do with regards to our OCS Certified Power Teacher Training Manual, meaning the grade book we're accustomed to. We're gonna take those same principles and learn how that works in PowerTeacher Pro. Okay, this is recorded as I mentioned, so you can, I'll share the link so you can share it with your teachers, have them sit down in front of a computer and kind of go over the webinar at their time. I am working on a manual that is going to be up to date, so I'll email that out as well. The way we're going to kind of have this meeting is there's a little question area. Please post any and all questions you have there. I'll check in on the question panel every now and then and answer anything along the way. So let's go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, this is the PowerTeacher training manual. We're still going to be logging into the same website, so a lot of these things still are relevant. The only thing that's different here that we're changing is the gradebook component of it. So we still use this website. Okay, I'll go ahead and copy it. And you still will log in as normal. So I'll go ahead and log in with a test account. For those following along, if you have an account, feel free to just log in and follow along here. There is one part that is administrative. Okay, so for those that are on this training, if you guys are admins, you log into the admin portal. You will need to individually enable each one of these classes. So as you're looking at the classes on my screen, you will need to enable each one of these classes to go from what they call PTG or PowerTeacher Gradebook to PTP or PowerTeacher Pro. That's a per class setting. If you would like to switch your entire school, you can certainly call us here at the help desk and we can make that change for you on the database end. We can just mass change it all, and so when teachers log in, they'll only have PowerTeacher Pro classes. What I do advise, if you have teachers who are a little would like to stay with PowerTeacher Gradebook and not necessarily go to PowerTeacher Pro, maybe switch one of their classes so they can play with one of the classes. Homeroom is a good idea. It's not printed on the report card, so if you switch their homeroom to PowerTeacher Pro, they can play with creating assignments and grading it there. It doesn't print on the report card. It is still recorded, but it doesn't print on the report card, so it's not like parents will see that when they get a report card. If you want like a test account, you can certainly reach out to me and we'll see what we can do to set something like that up. So as I mentioned, each one of these classes has individual settings. So as you can see, the first one here is a PowerTeacher Pro class, while the rest listed here are traditional PowerTeacher Gradebook, and then the last three here are PowerTeacher Pro classes here. So sticking to the manual here, let's just go over it. Table of contents, our agenda. I'll do a brief introduction. We'll go over the website, which you guys are already familiar with. Nothing has changed there. Attendance taking is the same. We'll get into the gradebook. And then down here is what we'll really talk about, how all these things look different now in the PowerTeacher Pro website. So for those of you guys don't recognize my voice, my name's Gilbert. I'm with SBTC. We provide PowerSchool support desk for the Archdiocese. So if you guys are stuck, need training, or just have questions on day-to-day tasks, the Arch does have a support desk for you guys to call in. That is myself. You can call us here at 773-509-3840 for those of you that know that number are already familiar with. I'll post it up on the webinar or contact information a little later. You could also send us an email, helpdesk@sbtcsupport.org. Again, I'll post that at the end here so everybody has it handy. So PowerTeacher Pro, a lot of the stuff that's on the website is still the same. So let's see if I remember most of this here. So in the manual, we talk about this was the portal. You still take attendance through the chair icon. That still hasn't changed. So even though a class is now designated as PowerTeacher Pro, taking attendance has not changed. That's still the same. You click on the chair icon, click on your code, and mark individual students absent, tardy, or present. That's still the same. Okay. Okay. The student information, okay, accessing student information through PowerTeacher, that still hasn't changed either. Okay. In the manual, it talks about clicking on the backpack icon, getting a list of students, clicking on a student, and then from here you would select different screens of information that you'd like to see. This still has not changed, so this is still the same, although there is a demographics page now in the gradebook. So I'll show you that a little later, but that's why I'm bringing this up here. You can access student demographic information here, but you'll also see that we'll have an opportunity to do that also from within the gradebook. So two different places to access student information. That has not changed. Taking attendance remains the same. That has not changed. Now, I don't know if I have many new PowerTeacher users, maybe. So if you have questions, Mary, Megan, Michelle, feel free to post any questions about maybe the top portion that I went over a little fast. If you are not familiar with any of these components, like the start page, what can it do? Taking attendance, what are my options? Things like that. Let me know in the question panel. I can certainly pause before moving to the gradebook to answer any and all questions there. Okay. Good. I recognize a lot of the names on this webinar today, so I think you guys are familiar with what the website looks like and how to work with it. So the last part of it here, or the bulk of our training here, is the launch gradebook portion of it. So before, we would have to download Java, make sure Java's installed on all the teacher computers and the lab computers, any computer that you would need to access gradebook from. Then we would have to download the gradebook, install it, and sometimes it would work, sometimes it would give us a security error. So now that's a little different. Now it's no longer a Java program. Now it's actually an HTML web page, which is very interactive with the tables in PowerSchool. So it actually writes more directly into PowerSchool than Gradebook. So the reason I say that is sometimes, if I have some admins here, you've seen from time to time where the gradebook, a teacher puts in an assignment and it takes some time for it to come over to the admin portal. That is because there are so many in between processes before it gets to the admin portal. Now, usually it's not a problem. It goes through pretty quick, but there have been hiccups here and there where a teacher creates an assignment. It takes a day or so to get back into the admin portal. Very rare, but it did. It used to happen. With the new gradebook, it writes directly into our tables, so there is no middleware or middle piece that the data has to travel through. So it is more direct. Okay. With PowerTeacher Pro, there's a new link on the top left corner. You guys may have seen it already. So you're no longer going to click this launch button down here or any of these other options down here. When you transition your classes to PowerTeacher Pro, you're going to be clicking this link here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it so you guys all see what it looks like. Takes a few moments to load, and when it loads, this is what you look at. This is what you're looking at. So the new gradebook has a different feel altogether. So it looks like brand new. Um, you don't have the same color scheme, the same layout, the little applet that pops up. It's all different. It's all on the web page. You've got some options on the left-hand side instead of across the top. You've got a class selector at the top here. And we'll go over everything here based on the training so you guys get a little more exposure on what that looks like. You can always go back to the start page by clicking on the logo, similar to the admin portal. Say a teacher wants to get out of her gradebook and go back and take attendance. Click on the logo, you go back to the start page. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up another PowerTeacher Pro link so you guys can all see things that pop up. So this is I believe the assignments page is what we're looking at. There's only one assignment, but the assignments page, I believe, is the default when you first click into it. And I'll show you how to navigate PowerTeacher Pro, but just wanted to give you a heads up. It doesn't look like there's a lot of data in here, and it's because this is all a test environment, and there's one assignment in there so far. Okay, so that covers launching the gradebook. There's no longer any need to install any intermediary software. It's just if you've got a browser and you've got an internet connection, it'll work. So that should say, it should go without saying, but you can access the gradebook from your smartphone, from your tablet, from your Chromebook, from your desktop, from your laptop. As long as you've got a web browser, you'll be able to access it. Okay. Now we used to have these things in the old gradebook, these little quick links that were really useful to us. I'm going to show you where these new navigation menus are now. Okay. So the score sheet and the assignments, that actually got switched now. We have this button now called grading. So in grading, when you click on it, you get a sub-menu of options, including the score sheet and an assignment list. So the assignment list is just a whole bunch of assignments you've created for the term or for the whole year. There is a selector here for the different terms you want to see. So if you want to go back to trimester 1, you can see trimester 1 information. If you got trimester 2 data, trimester 3, and of course you can click the all so you can view all of the assignments created thus far. Okay. I believe I have it sorted by due date, so it's showing me the most current due date, and then the earliest one is at the bottom there. You can sort this all sorts of ways. You can sort it by assignment name, by categories. You can sort it by due date, all sorts of things here. The score sheet looks very similar. I'm going to go ahead and go to grading here and click score sheet. The score sheet looks very similar to the score sheet that we were familiar with in the gradebook. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up T1. Notice we have a listing of students on the left. The final grade, or now they call it the course grade, down the middle, just like we would normally. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different assignments listed across the top here, color coordinated as well, just like the old gradebook used to have. Okay, you can now score these just like you would in the old gradebook by simply clicking into the empty box. The difference now is you get this menu that pops up on the right when you click into an empty box. This is the entry box that comes up where you can enter in a score with your keyboard. Notice the buttons are nice and big. The reason for that is because this gradebook is supposed to be cross-platform, so you're able to easily touch with your fingers on a cell phone, tablet, even touchscreen Chrome books. So it makes it easier for you to touch on the screen. But with the mouse or the keypad, you can still use those to enter in those scores that you'd like to record. Okay. So we've got a few toggles here. This was in the old gradebook, but I feel like it wasn't quite used as much, where I can toggle down to the next student and enter a score for them, toggle down to the next student, and so on and so forth. Hit save there. Okay. So that's a score sheet in a sense here. So we've got a few toggles. We click into it, you get the side menu on the right. You're going to be able to enter in comments just like you were able to in the old gradebook. You're able to fill down, fill across, and even mark assignments collected, late, exempt, missing, and incomplete. So all these buttons down here, they're simply just flags that indicate an assignment is either late or incomplete, or a student is simply exempt from receiving a score for that particular assignment. Okay, let's go back to this navigation menu. I don't want to get too deep into it just yet. We will go back into how to create an assignment, score it a little later. But I'll go ahead and just show you a couple more of the navigation menus here. So the student info and the grade setup, that moved a little bit. Now that information is in students. Okay, so the student info now is your demographics. Another thing to note, as you're switching away from certain things, like right now I want to go away from the score sheet, it will automatically prompt me if I want to save so far what I've entered. The Java used to do that too, but I feel like this is a little bit of a better warning. Hey, you're about to leave this window. Do you want to save your progress? And so you have a save or discard changes. So this is the demographic window that I was mentioning earlier. This is actually will show you student info. We can get to more of the student info by clicking into different links here about the student. We can get into quick lookup. Okay, so we can see other classes that the student is also enrolled in, what kind of grades they're receiving in those classes. So if I'm a gym teacher, I want to see if this individual student is failing any other classes. I can get into quick lookup for that student and see some more data there. The text on this screen is a little small. The nice thing about the new gradebook is they've added different views. So right now I've got the small view on. I believe that's just to give you more screen real estate here, but I can also switch it to large view. The data gets a little bigger. You can kind of see the information a little bit better. I believe you can switch that at any time by just clicking on the little person icon on the top right here, and you could switch view from small, medium, large. Okay. That's the student info. Grade setup and class content, that got moved into settings, believe it or not. So settings, here's your class descriptions. I can click on a class, see the name of the class, the abbreviation we've recorded for that class, the section number. I could even give a class now a custom name. Now this is actually very new, and I mean like winter break new, because we recently upgraded PowerSchool, and one of the things that they saw very beneficial um, to teachers is that the ability to give a class a custom name. Now that was a thing in the gradebook, the Java gradebook, that did not initially get moved over to PowerTeacher Pro, and now it did. So you can actually, this is the name of the course, and this is like a custom class name. Now this is not going to supersede the course name in the report card at all. This is just a custom display name in the gradebook. Say you're a science teacher for the entire school and you wanted to kind of make sense of how many, say you have 2 fourth grade science classes, you can name one of them fourth grade science AM, so it's your AM group, and another one you can name it fourth grade science PM, that is your PM group. So it's just a way for you to give the class a little custom name. Okay, so that's class description. So these are the 4 classes that I enabled so far to be my PowerTeacher Pro classes. Now I have more. If you guys remember, when I first logged in, I had a long list of classes, but these are the only 4 that I have access to from PowerTeacher Pro. My other classes are still PowerTeacher Gradebook, so the 2 are separated, and so you can only access PowerTeacher Pro classes from the PowerTeacher Pro Gradebook. For the other classes, you'd go back to the PowerTeacher Gradebook, the Java version, to access those others. So, so it should be said that once you go to PowerTeacher Pro, there's no going back to the gradebook. So plan that out very carefully. Once you switch all your classes to PowerTeacher Pro, you either keep the classes there, or we'll have to create brand new ones in the old gradebook, because there's no way to go back from PowerTeacher Pro to the PowerTeacher Gradebook. I think they left it. I think PowerSchool kind of left it that way for a reason. They're currently developing a lot of things in PowerTeacher Pro, so the idea is to move forward with the PowerTeacher Pro gradebook. So when you're ready to make that transition, feel free to give us a call here at the help desk, and we'll show you how to do that per class or per teacher, or we can do it for your whole school. Grade setup, that's also in settings, I believe. Traditional grade calculations, and they also have a standards grade calculation. So the majority of us are going to be clicking into traditional grade calculation. So in here is where you can see how I'm going to calculate each term. Notice I think we've already had this a little set up here. So we have some category weighing going on in T1, category weighing in T2, and then we have some total points in T3. Okay, so let me jump into T1 so I can show you the different options. And to do that, I'm going to click this Actions button with the little pencil. And notice when I choose category weighing, I'm able to add in as many categories as I'd like for it to calculate. Okay, I could do, these are all my categories, and this is the weight that I'm associating to that particular class, or I'm sorry, that particular category. So if I have a 2, 3, 4, 1, that translates to the system as a 20% for the first one, 30% for the second one, 40 for the third, and then 10% gets the bottommost category. I could also delete them, so there's a little minus symbol, boom, goes away, and then the percentages recalculate themselves automatically. Okay, I could hit save. Now that's a category weighing section. Now if I go back to my T2, say I want to go back to total points, I could just do total points, no weight. Looks like it wants a 1 in there at least. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit save. So I've got my my T1 is category weights, my T2 is total points, and then my T3 is a total points as well. So you can see how you can play around with some of the formulas and per term, as opposed to a whole class for the whole year. So I believe there's also a copy feature, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if we can find it for you guys. It doesn't look like I'm finding it really quick, but might be a good one to. Oh, here we are. I knew that was there. It was something that was available in the old grade book, so I knew this had to have come over. So you could do, you click on the little gear icon, copy traditional grades, and you can say copy within class A to another class. So you can copy from one term to another, or you can copy to another class. So you can say copy the entire setup of T1 science to T1, I don't know, social studies per se. And it gives us the option to, once we do it, go ahead and recalculate the final grades at the same time. So we could do validate and copy. So you can copy the setup from one class to another really quickly. Okay. Let me not get too deep into this because I know I've got a couple more links to show you, but I'm getting some great questions here already. So let me show you a couple more things. Kind of, we'll go along the manual and then we'll go back to some of these questions. So reports and attendance. Reports, there's a whole report link, and notice they've chopped down the reports to 4 different reports. These are the 4 most useful reports that PowerSchool saw when they did their analysis on the reports that are in the gradebook. If you go back to the old gradebook, you'll notice that there's a number of reports in there. I want to say at least 10. Of those 10, these were probably the most heavily used. So these 4 got moved over to the PowerTeacher Pro website, or gradebook, I should say. It's not to say that there won't be more added to this, but for now, these are the 4 most useful reports in the system. And then attendance, of course, there's no way to record attendance from within the gradebook still. So you would go back to the PowerTeacher logo and simply record attendance for that particular class. Okay. So let's talk about setting up gradebook. And I think this will actually jump into your question, Michelle, here. I'll read it out in a second. So setting up your gradebook, let's talk about how to add categories really quick and how to add assignments. And then we'll talk about how to copy an assignment and then enter a grade and final grade comment for an assignment. So I want to just cover those 4 bullet points really quick. My next little session here. So I'm going to jump back into PowerTeacher Pro. Now, in the old gradebook, I had the class selector on the top left corner. Let's see if I could bring up a screenshot here. Yes, here it is. I'm not sure if I can zoom in that much, but you see how on the top left here, we used to have this selector of classes where you can click into the different classes assigned to you. So in the PowerTeacher Pro, that changed into the top center menu. Okay, so you click on that, and here's a list of all of your classes assigned to you. Notice if they're indicated as PTG classes, those are the old gradebook classes, and then the ones with these extra buttons are your PTP or your PowerTeacher Pro classes. So I, again, cannot really do much to PTG classes with regards to recording attendance and creating categories, things like that. But I can actually modify these other classes here while I'm in PTP. So I'm going to go ahead and select my class. Okay. Zoom in, zoom out of this a little bit. And to create a category in PTP and to create an assignment, actually, we have this great little create button on the top right. So when you click the create button, you're going to have two options. You want to either create an assignment or a category. So in this case, I'm going to say I'm going to create a category. I'm going to get this little dialog menu, this little box here. Okay, and it's got some very simple entries. So limit this category to these classes. Okay, now this is actually pretty new. This was not a thing in the old gradebook. You couldn't just limit one category to one class. When you created a category, you created it for all classes. Here, you're able to create a category for just one class, or you can create it for all your other classes. So in here, I'm going to create a category for all my classes. I'm just going to click on that. So notice it says 4 classes were selected. It wants me to give it a name, so I'm going to say test category. Just like in the old grade book, it wants you to give it a color. Go with tan on that one. This is actually pretty neat now. When you create a category, you're able to set it to be active so it can show up on the gradebook, or you can say inactive and you could have it hide, but you can still find your inactive categories. So that's nice because it allows you to clean up your gradebook a little bit. Say 1 year you create 2-3 extra categories that the next year you're not going to use. You're able to deactivate those and leave active the ones you will use. You can give the category a description. You've got a few font editing tools here. And then one of the things before we hit save, so hitting save will create that category. But one of the things I want to show you is these tabs that are up here. So these are actually pretty neat. We have so many options now with PowerTeacher Pro that we never used to have with PowerTeacher Gradebook. So in assignment defaults, this is similar to what we used to have in the gradebook. You're able to say by default, when I pick this category, I want it to be scored by points, percent, collected only, grade scale, go with points. And then when I select this category, I want it to be a default of, say, 25 points. I wanted the assignment to be published immediately, or I can delay it. And then I want it to count at final grade. Again, hitting save will create those that category with those assignment defaults. So let me go to view all here. Here, it'll show me all of my categories that I've already created. So if you're curious to find out what categories you have, you click view all and it'll show you how many categories you have, are they available at what classes, and their status. So if they're active, inactive, something to that nature. So let's go ahead and hit save. So you'll see that I've gone ahead and created a new category. I've got the little green, your changes have been saved menu. And if I wanted to view my categories, I can go to grading categories. And here's a list of all of the categories that I've created, including that test one down here at the bottom. I've got some sorting tools I can do on the left. When I deactivate a category, say I want to deactivate this one that I just created, hit save. Notice by default it goes away. Doesn't mean I deleted it, it goes away. And then when I want to bring it back up, I can just click show active on the top right. And notice I've got a couple of categories that were deactivated. And I could activate those again by simply clicking the edit or the pencil and clicking active, and I get to see any active or inactive categories. Okay, just going back to the manual here, see if I missed anything. Most of the stuff actually still applies. Only lead teachers can add categories. Keep them, you can create things like projects, quizzes, exams, final tests, things like that. We went over the defaults, which are on the screenshot here. And then we talk about adding an assignment. So let me answer your question, Michelle, here. Your question was, with PTP, can you set weights for your whole school, or does each teacher still need to set them? To my understanding, Michelle, you can actually, with PTP, you can set global weights. So it sounds like on the admin portal, you're going to be able to set a weight for the entire school. Or you can allow teachers to simply weight their grade books themselves. Either do total points or do category weights, or I believe term weights was another option. I'm not sure if that is still available, but you could do a global setup in the admin portal that'll come over to the PowerTeacher Pro site. That's actually something we were not able to do before in the PowerTeacher gradebook. So before we couldn't say everybody's test, homework, quiz were going to be weighted by X, Y, Z, and that's going to be a standard across the school. We couldn't do that in the old gradebook. With PowerTeacher Pro, I believe, yes, that's actually an option. If you'd like to do something like that, Michelle, just send us an email. We'll find you the documentation for that and walk you through how to set that up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and send that for you guys all to read. Keep those questions coming in. I know the PowerTeacher Pro seems very user-friendly, but sometimes even myself, I get a little lost in how to do something that I read about or I did before, because there's so many different ways to do it. I get so many options in how to do something in here. The add of assignment category or add assignment function here in PTP is going to be very similar to creating a category with a couple of extra options. So I'm going to go ahead and create assignment. Now, when I'm in this create assignment menu, this is very similar to creating categories, but notice now I can actually create, so by default, I'm creating an assignment at my one class. However, I do have the option of creating that same one assignment for all of my PowerTeacher Pro classes, or 2 of my PowerTeacher Pro classes. So I can create assignments for multiple courses at one time. In the creation of an assignment, I could do it for multiple. So it saves me a couple of clicks, basically. I'll do it here. It'll copy it in 2 different places, and that'll save me some time from creating assignments individually per class. So we'll call this test assignment. Throw it in a category called project. We'll give it points of, let's say 50 points. Due today, count and final grade. Let's go ahead and hit, before I hit save and close, I want to show you a couple of options I have up here. Now notice before I go up to the tabs, I do have a save and close. Okay, the reason I have 2 separate buttons is because when I hit save, I can save this assignment as new and then continue to create a new assignment and hit save, and then a new assignment and hit save. So the creation of assignment stays within this little box, or I can just hit save and close and go up to the top right, hit create. They added a save button so that you can create things pretty fast here. Now I'm going to go up to students here, and I want to show you this tab here. This one's really neat. So by default, all of my students are assigned to this new assignment that I'm creating. However, I do have the ability to add and remove who gets scored from this particular assignment. In the old gradebook, that was not an option. You would have to exempt a student from a score. Here, it looks like you can create assignments for all students or some students. And you get to choose which one of those students you're creating the assignment for. So that's definitely something different. So I can say, I'm just going to create this assignment for this one student only. Or I can create it for the entire school, like, or my entire class like I normally do. Standards, okay. For those of you using SLTs, here's where you're going to be able to add SLTs. Okay, publish. Here's my publish option. If I want to create a bunch of assignments, but maybe not show those assignments just yet, or those assignment scores, this is where I would uncheck this, maybe say on a specific date, and give a date on when I want to publish it, say Friday. So on Friday, this will be published, or I can just say immediately and publish those scores. So those are the different tabs up here now. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. I've created the new assignment. I also notice I get a little link that says show score the assignment. So from the assignment creation, I could click on that and jump directly into scoring the assignment. Now the way to get to that alternatively would be to go to grading, score sheet, and finding that new assignment. I'm in T1 right now. I noticed that because it says it right here. So I'm going to switch my term on the top right here to T2. Here's my test assignment, and then another assignment that was created before this class started. So there we go. Now I created this assignment in my science class and also my homeroom class. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to homeroom so you guys can see that it too is there. I believe one of these was already there before I got here. So just if you guys think, I did it twice in the one classroom, no, I believe I had done this earlier in the year, or earlier in the day, actually. Okay. So that's how you create an assignment with PowerTeacher Pro. Now, scoring the assignment, you go to the score sheet, click in the box, and this is where that right menu shows up, and you can go ahead and just enter assignments and go to the next student here. Now this is a really nice little, I want to call it validation error that comes up. Now notice I said give the student 99 points, but that assignment is only worth 50. So I get this little error that says, whoa, the number cannot be greater than 50. So I can go down to 50. That's really useful in case you're creating a number of assignments with different point values. The system will be smart enough to tell you, hey, this assignment is not worth 100, it's only 50. So it won't save bad data, basically. Okay, so we're going to scroll down to the next part here. We talked about the Publish tab. And we're down to how to copy an assignment. So this actually, we can still copy an assignment. But as you guys saw, while I was creating the assignment, I can actually do it from there. So here's the list of assignments for my fourth grade science class. I got to the screen by clicking on creating assignment lists. So in here, I can click on the little gear icon and go copy assignments again, and then it'll take me through a small little thing where it'll say from which term, which class, to which term, which class, and then I can also write a different custom due date, right? So if I wanted to say copy my trimester 2 assignments from science, say to my trimester 2 social studies class. Okay, so copy all of those assignments from one to the other. Here's a quick little screen on it pulls up the assignments that exist in those. I can say the whole thing, copy assignments. 7 assignments were copied. So if I go to my social studies class here, those same assignments here were copied over. There you go. So these were in my science class. Now they belong to my social studies class, as well as my science class. So there's the copy feature. You could do it one or two ways. If the assignment's already created, you can use the gear to copy. Or as you're creating an assignment, you can create the assignment for multiple classes. So it'll do the copy for you while you're creating it. So I wanted to cover those two components. Copy assignments. It could be a time saver there for a lot of teachers. Okay, entering grade in a comment. Very similar. I kind of went over this a little bit, but I want to get into it a little more. When you're grading an assignment, you're going to want to go to the score sheet. Now, there's multiple ways to jump to the score sheet. One way to just simply click on the name of the assignment, and you're in the score sheet for that one assignment. I can switch assignments in the little drop down, or I could just go to score sheet and it'll bring up a list of my students with all of their assignments, and I simply just click into the box and continue grading as I'm probably accustomed to. Now, as I said, I'm using the mouse, but you can certainly use the keyboard to do mass entries here. Now, I could quick fill down, so I can say fill, and 11 things were copied all the way down. And I can also fill across, and notice, here, it'll copy across here. Actually, it cleared them out. There you go. So I've got a few options with regards to assignment entry. I'll leave it at that. If you have specific questions about anything on the screen, feel free to ask me. You could also record comments. You know, I'm still selected into the one assignment score. And I can hit save. And so I can create a an assignment comment which is separate from the comment that you would normally give at the end of the term. So to record the final grade comment or the course comment, you would want to click on the column that says course comment. I get a very similar right-hand navigation menu, but notice here I can say different comments. Something to that effect, save it. Now that is the comment that would go on the report card. So anything in this course grade column, that would go to the report card. Anything within the individual assignments, the parents can still see on the parent portal, but it won't print on any report card. So it's not a bad idea to put assignment comments. Parents can see those when they log in. And I know this is actually a very useful tool to a lot of teachers. So I'll go over how to do it in PowerTeacher Pro. This override of the final grade. So this is still an option in the new gradebook. Overriding final grades is very useful to teachers when maybe the grade scale that the school uses versus the grade scale in PowerSchool is 1 or 2 points off. You can always manually override the final grade to say a 91 should not be a B plus but an A minus, something to that effect. I'll show you guys how to manually override a final grade. So here we are again in the score sheet. I'm still in the score sheet. I'm going to click on this Alexandria account here. They received a 92% B plus. Say my particular grade scale says a 92 is actually an A minus. So I can actually override that here by simply doing A minus, hitting save, and that's it. That is now the new final grade for that student. So if you have teachers that are part-time teachers, gym teachers that don't get into the gradebook very often, but once at the end of the term to put in all the grades, manual override seems to be a little more straightforward now. Now there's this little triangle that pops up when you do a manual override, okay? That is to indicate that the system did not calculate an A minus, rather it was manually overridden. Now this will only show up in the gradebook, but not on the parent portal or the report cards. So to the parent and the report cards, there is no little flag, no little triangle. Only on the teacher side will you see this triangle. Now, on the right-hand side here, there's a couple things to note. Now that we've manually overridden the grade, notice it says calculated grade B plus 92%. So it does keep track of what the calculated value should be, as opposed to the manual override. Now, I could always revert back to calculated value by simply clicking this little go back button. So when I click on it, it goes back to the B plus, my little triangle goes away, and I'm back to 92%. Okay. And this is still the same place you would put in those final grade comments. So you have a little box at the bottom here that says, comment, and I could put it in up to 2,000 characters if I'd want. There's also a comment bank, okay, that didn't go away. So to the right of this little grid at the top, I have an icon that says little comment bubble. Now, if you get a bigger box that I can write the same comment that I can down here, okay. So I'm not getting more characters to put in, but rather just a bigger space to type that in. And then I also get a link to my comment bank. Okay, So this is the comment bank, of course, being just a pre-selected little comment snippets that you can use. So if your school wants to kind of streamline the type of comments that are going out, you can use them all from your comment bank. Administrators, if you guys are on this, you can create a comment bank for your school so that teachers can stick to a comment bank, or you can let them type in their own comments, make it a little more personable. Your choice here. Okay, that is overriding final grades. And then I think we will end today's webinar with successful learner traits. I'm not 100% sure if, Michelle, if your school, or if Mary, if you're still out there, if your school uses successful learner traits, but I will go over how to record those so that people that watch this at a later time know how to enter in successful learner traits. So the way successful learner traits work is in PowerSchool, they're actually considered standards. So we've built out successful learner traits in standards. That's important to note because now when we are in grading, we're going to have the option of going into traditional grades, which is your A, B, C. Okay. And then we're also going to have the option of going into standards. So standard grading, this is where your successful learner traits are. Okay, this is not necessarily standards as we all know them to be, but this is just successful learner traits. And the way we know that these are successful learner traits is because they start with these are IDs across the top here that I just highlighted. So they start with SLT, meaning successful learner trait. And then we've got, if you hover your mouse over it, it's got a little brief description of what that is. So this is the one that says manages emotions and behaviors. This is the one that says recognizes personal strengths, seeks assistance when needed. And so going across, there should be about 13 different successful learner traits. So for those of you that remember how to enter those in the final grade mode, well, this is your final grade mode. So going into grading, under grades, clicking on standards, and look for those columns that start with SLT. SLT's, of course, standing for successful learner traits. So in here, so it's in addition to your final grade, you can score a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1. You also have this other symbol here that says that successful learner trait was not evaluated during this term. Hit save. And so those successful learner traits didn't necessarily modify the term final grade, but it rather is an addition to. So for those of you guys using, I guess the best way to identify if you use successful learner traits or not would be if you use a 2-page report card or a 1-page report card. So the 1-page report card is just a listing of your classes and your final grades along with attendance. If you use a 2-page report card, you still get the 1 page with the listing of classes, grades, and attendance, plus you get a 2nd page with a little grid or a little chart of all these successful learner traits and what their scores are for each class. Okay. Now there is another mode, there's another way to put in successful learner traits. So the way I'm showing you here by going to grading standards is what was known as the final grade mode, meaning this is where you would go to final grades, click on the button, and then just fill this in, and that's what prints on the report card. The alternative to that is by going through assignments. So an assignment list, if I edit one of these assignments, say this one here that is scored, I can go up to something called standards. And so in here, I can add standards to one particular assignment and score that standard. Okay. The class that I selected maybe has no standards, or actually, I may have to go to settings, display settings, maybe something in here to kind of turn on or enable standard scoring. Let's try going in here. So here's some settings that were normally available in the old gradebook that said tools, preferences, I believe. So I'm not sure here. It doesn't look like our assignment here got successful learner traits, but here's our assignment here, and there might be some standards here. Oh, that's right, because I have multiple classes selected. So I'm going to unselect this one. Hit save. There we go. Here they are. So the one assignment I had created had multiple classes that didn't share the same standards. So I can only score the standards, if they're associated to a class. So here I'm going to say I want those first 13 SLT ones. I'm going to hit save, ignore the rest. There's a lot more, but they don't pertain to successful learner traits, so I'm going to ignore those. I'm going to hit save and close. Now notice here when I'm in the assignment mode and I clicked on the one particular assignment, I can actually score the assignment as well as successful learner traits. So you can create an assignment and score successful learner traits in an assignment mode, or you can go straight to the final grade mode for that class and simply just enter them in once for the end of the term. There really isn't a benefit over one over the other. It's just different methods of putting it in. I suppose if you create SLTs in the assignment mode, which I believe this manual talks about, creating them in assignment mode, you can score them multiple times throughout the term and get an average. So I could score it at the start of the term, somewhere in the middle of the term, and then at the end of the term, and then get an average of what their final grade term successful learner trait grade was averaged to. So did they progress? Did they regress in that term? Most teachers, in my experience, do it once at the end of the term, right before report cards go home, but you have the options there. Okay. Now, there is a lot of really neat things about PowerTeacher Pro that I probably kind of skipped over just to keep the training going. But I'm actually, with regards to the manual, we've covered all the bullet points in the agenda. We talked about how most of the same things in the old grade book or this old agenda remain the same, but the bottom portions, the bottom bullet points change a little bit, and that just changed with the new look of the grade book. Um, and so with that, I'll open it up to a few questions. I'll leave the webinar open for a few more minutes. We are at the 4 o'clock mark. We did start a little bit after 3 o'clock, so I believe we hit the 1 hour recording. But I'll leave it open for another 5 minutes if you guys want to pop in your questions. If something comes up, I'll be sure to show you guys. Go ahead and type in your questions. I'll give you 5 minutes to type it in, and we'll end the recording after all the questions have been answered. There was a question about successful learner traits and whether they're not sure if the school has ever used them or not. I went ahead and answered it, but I'll answer it over the recording. So the key thing here is to find out if your school uses a 1-page report card or a 2-page report card. If the answer is a 2-page report card, more than likely your school is recording successful learner traits, and so that last portion of this recording is important to keep in mind and find out how to get to those successful learner traits so you can score them. That's a really good question, Michelle. I got another question here that I'm going to answer on the recording. Can an admin change or enter a grade in PTP? We're still kind of going over the permission sets with the Arch, but as it currently stands, there is a mode for you to log in and see the grade book in administrator mode, much like you can do with the old grade book. There is that same capability in PTP. So if you're an admin, you can launch a teacher's grade book per se in administrator mode. And if you guys are familiar with the administrator mode in the old grade book, that means you can see the data, you can kind of change the data a little bit. You can toggle between things, but when you go to save, that is not a feature that is enabled in administrator mode. So, so as it stands, you can only view data in PowerTeacher Pro administrator mode. I have another good question. It says, I know you showed us how to manually override letter grades. Is there a way an admin can change the grading scale for a particular school to match a grading scale? Yeah, Megan, I think that's actually an admin component of it. There is a way for admins to change grade scales for any class in the system. So, and I think they've actually made it so that each class can potentially have a different grading scale. So, so you have the ability to do one grade scale across the whole school, or different scales per classes. So say you had a class that was, um, I don't know, you wanted to grade it on a curve or an easier scale. That is a possibility by creating two different classes with two different grade scales. Or specials, that comes up a lot. You know, your regular classes get your ABC scale, while your specials, say your foreign language, computers, are get a pass fail. So each class can have a different scale, and admins actually control which scale goes to what class. So that's an admin tool, not a teacher tool, unfortunately. One of the nice things I did get a chance to explore, though, Megan, to your point here, um, there is a thing called in settings, I believe it's called student grade skills. Again, this is a feature that admins have to turn on the admin portal, so teachers can't um, simply just create a grade scale on their own to match, um, say, some get grade scale that they found somewhere. Um, but what we can do here with student grade skills is, say, in my fourth grade science class, I have one student with a learning disability. I can actually have him go along with the rest of the class um, with that same scale, or say I were to pick my one student here, and I say this one student can have a pass fail scale. Pass fail scale. And I'm going to hit save. So what that means is everybody in that class follows the regular grade scale, but this one student will receive a pass or fail. So if I'm looking at my score sheet, let's see if I have to recalculate final scores. I may have to here. Um, Let me go back to the grading. Recalculate final scores. Here we go. And there you go. So I'm sorry, I'm clicking around too much here for the recording, but notice everybody else follows the same scale except the student down at the bottom here, who has a student scale that's pass fail. So there is that component at least. The whole class can follow the one scale, and the one group of students or the one student can have a different scale, like a pass fail. That was actually something that was really big because um, I've gotten a lot of calls from schools that would want to do something like this, where one student or two students um, maybe miss the majority of the class because of an injury or something like that, and they would not have them want to have a failing grade, but rather a pass fail. So now you can do that with student grade scales. Um, for the recording, and maybe to answer your question a little bit more here, Megan, um, the options that I have when I'm creating a student scale are controlled by the admins. So the admin would say, you can allow for X, Y, and Z student grade scale only, and so it's not like a free range of options. It's a controlled range of options here. Okay, I'll take any more questions. Hopefully that answered what you're looking for here, Megan. But I'll take any more questions here before I stop the recording. Okay, I don't have many more questions coming in like I did earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.